It's time to talk about evolution in the plant and animal kingdom. The first map we have up here is a map of the evolution of plants. This is a cladogram that shows the major plant groups in a summary fashion, from the mosses, which are non-vascular, which means they do not have cells in their body to conduct water and food, to the seedless vascular plants, which have vascular tissue, but they do not manufacture seeds. Neither of these two first plants here manufacture seeds. The next group, the gymnosperms, the conifers, they actually make seeds, but they have needles for reproductive or for photosynthetic structures, and not reproductive. They have cones for reproductive structures. They have needles for photosynthesis, which are inferior, and then evolution, to catching sunlight. If you want to catch something with a stick, it's rather difficult. It's easier to catch with a baseball mitt. Dicots and monocots evolved such structures, which is the broad, flat leaf that is on most trees that people are familiar with. So back here in the evolution here, number one is talking about an ancestral algae, the Caryophycean algae, that actually gave rise to the plants. They were probably being washed ashore in tidal pools. They began to experience selective pressures to adapt to life on land. The reason is there was severe competition in the water. Water filters light out. With algae in the water also, there's severe competition for that light, but on land there's almost uninterrupted sunlight. When the first adaptations came about with resistance to dehydration and whatnot, that led to the evolution of the mosses up here. Mosses are non-vascular. They do not make seeds. They only get a few inches tall, but they can grow on land. So that then led to the advancement of more structures. For plants, height is a big deal because the taller you are, the more light you get, and you can actually crowd out your neighbors. So the next group here, there's a pivotal evolution here of a structure. It's called vascular tissue. Vascular tissue is tissue that is responsible for conducting water and food throughout a body. We have vascular tissue, that's our veins and arteries. The evolution of vascular tissue was a big leap forward because then plants could get taller. Mosses are restricted in height because they do not have vascular tissue and therefore can only soak water by osmosis, essentially up from the ground. So that led to the evolution of the first vascular plants, which were the seeds, the seeded plants. They are the seedless vascular plants, which are the ferns. Ferns do not reproduce with seeds. Instead, they use spores, and on the undersides of their leaves, little dark spore capsules form at certain times in the year, and they throw those spores out in the air, and the spores grow into more fern plants. But again, evolution of height is important. Ferns don't get more than 10 or 15 feet tall, and that's only in a few species. Most species of ferns have underground stems, so they only grow from the ground up as leaves. And so most of the ferns you're familiar with are just leaves sticking out of the ground. Their branches are underground. Something we take for granted, branches above ground, was actually a later evolutionary strategy. That brings us to number three, which is maybe the most pivotal step on this cladogram. That was the invention of seeds. Seeds are a great structure for plant reproduction in that they protect the plant embryo and make it possible to move that embryo deliberately away from the parent plant and thus reduce competition at the parent plant. So and natural selection tends to favor reproduction of organisms that can make offspring that are successful, that in turn are going to make more offspring. And ultimately, if you're a plant and you're throwing all your babies right on the ground below you, you're going to get selected against. If you're a parent plant and you can somehow get your seeds away from you, your kids survive and you survive because you're not all competing for the same water and food. So that led to the gymnosperms. The gymnosperms are the conifers and their related species. So pine, spruce, yew, those are all in this group. The gymnosperms dominated the earth for 150 million years. The dinosaurs fed on them and ate them. In fact, they dominated worldwide until about 65 million years ago. A mass extinction event occurred, wiped out most of the life on the planet. The diminutive flowering plants, flowers were invented a little bit before that mass extinction. That allowed the flowering plants to actually then populate areas that had no life, and the flowering plants then spread across the globe. Flowering plants diverged into two broad types. There are the dicots at number 5 here. They tend to be broadleaf things, so oak trees, maple trees, walnut trees, they're all in this group. Dandelions are in this group, so any broadleaf weed that's in your yard is in this group. Most of the gorgeous flowers that people plant in their gardens for summer colors, those are all dicots. On the other hand, another huge group of plants developed. They are the monocots. The monocots tend to have narrow leaves, and all the veins in the leaves tend to run parallel. The largest family of flowering plants is in this group. They are the orchids. So in this group, extremely successful species. Although Missouri does not have many orchid species in the tropics, there are over 20,000 species of orchids, and the list keeps growing as new species are continually found. Meanwhile, in the broadleaf dicot category here, about the biggest group is the sunflower family. So the orchid family and the sunflower family are two massively successful styles of plants in the plant kingdom that came from the long line of evolution in the plant kingdom.